Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm here again this week with Alex and Aaron, and we just made it past the round of 16 into the quarterfinals. How are y'all feeling?
2 robots in the top 8.
Very good.
Definitely. I think in words, we're all pretty excited around here and super thrilled to have both of our robots in the top 8. I think that's a really big deal. If I am correct, that has never been done before by any other sort of team / dynasty. So it's a really huge honor, and we're looking forward to showing that both of our robots deserved it next week. But before we sort of jump into the future, let's talk a little bit about our fights last week, how they went. So just to kick things off, Alex, maybe you can talk a little bit about Rotators' general strategy, sort of what kind of moves they use and what we were anticipating.
Right. So Rotator is an interesting robot in that when it came in, it had the double disc design, as most of you are familiar with, and has since moved to fight the ground game. And Victor actually does a really, really good ground game because he has a unique strategy. That strategy being that he'll beat you in the ground game, right? And then after your robot is up and off the ground, he'll sweep around and go for tires. And I mentioned that in our pre-fight interview. And here again, because it's just such a critical thing that you have to keep in mind whenever you're fighting Rotator. And so how he sets his robot up is another strategy aspect that he has to pick in the fight. And it's kind of just depending on where you can hit. And so knowing his strategy, we felt pretty good about the wheels being protected. We have the armor hoop that is shock mounted and has done a really great job against pretty much everyone. I mean, we had really bad damage from Gigabyte, but the armor hoop was still intact and still did its job. And we could have kept taking hit after hit, and it wouldn't have been ripped off or anything. It still would have blocked all of his hits because he wasn't able to get anything critical. And so going into this fight, it's a matter of protecting the wheels. Check. We have the wheel guards for that. But then if he flips over, what does he hit there? And so we had to decide: do we want the tall ears or do we want the short armor? And we went with the tall ears, just to protect the armor or the weapon module a bit more. So
I do remember having discussions of, is he going to start upside down? If he does start upside down, where it's, I think that's worse for us.
It is worse for us, yeah.
Yeah, in this picture here, you can sort of see that based on sort of how Rotator's angled and where we're moving, that blade is a little dangerous. And I think Tantrum's weapon is one of our more exposed, sort of vulnerable parts. So if that blade can sort of catch our weapon and get us cockeyed, then that definitely gives us a lot of damage.
Yeah, we saw what happened with Fusion last year. We've updated some things, but
yeah,
right.
Fresh in the memory.
Yep.
Alrighty, so I'm going to ask the question: why were we stuck in the corner?
That's a great question, Aaron. So if you all go back and actually watch the episode, you can see the moment a little chain slips out of Tantrum onto the floor. And that mischievous piece of chain gave us a lot of headaches during the fight. Tantrum, like many other robots and BattleBots, actually has magnets on its belly, and these sort of help us stick. They give us more ground force so that we can push harder and sort of turn really well. And unfortunately, magnets attract things such as chain. And so what actually happened is, while we were sort of fighting with Rotator in the corner, our magnets picked up that chain. It was just the right height such that we were high centered, and we were unable to get enough wheels on the ground to get off of that chain. So you can see we were using our self-rider arms, trying to be a little clever to knock it off, but it did have us stuck. And so I think correct me if I'm wrong, we were sort of actually got stuck on it multiple times. And there were some times where Rotator may have knocked us. And then there was also another time where we sort of were able to, whether it was hit a floor seam or get lucky, sort of just knock it off and then sort of give Rotator a little spin and nip him back. So yeah, that's why we were stuck. Unfortunately, things like that are sort of just a trade-off in BattleBots. You either have those magnets or you don't. And debris does tend to get stuck on them if you're not careful. So that's what happened. It wasn't damage per se, although it was in a different sense in that we lost a chain.
I'd say, yeah, and just for clarity on the magnet side of things, I've seen some other builders, they got a couple hundred pounds of magnets. Like, no, Tantrum has 60 pounds of magnets territory on the front of it. Same with Blip. As far as we're not going crazy, but every little bit helps. So
Yep, and the arms were actually a conscious decision as part of that, and having the arms be able to lift us up. That was our our fail-safe whenever we get high centered on something, whether it's on the magnets or otherwise, is having the extra degree of freedom to try to shake things loose. And so you mentioned we got stuck more than once. We got stuck twice. The first time we actually unstuck ourselves using the arms, and that's where we gave the old slipperoo from Rotator, and it was really entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
And which is why that Victor came in and hit us later after he saw that we got off the first time. He knew they could come off any second. So instead of going in, instead of getting the count out or trying for the count out there, he wanted to rip off the arms, and he almost did, right? He ripped one side completely off, and the other was like just hanging on by a thread. So it was the right call from Victor, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other point is that the chain actually came from our puncher, not from our drive. So
yeah, it also came from the puncher on a sweet punch, like
yeah.
like Tantrum driving towards the shelf with Rotator, punch, great punch, they go flying, and the chain comes out of our own robot.
Right,
like,
that's actually the same punch we almost ripped off of Rotator's front wedge too. After the fight, we didn't even realize that during the fight, but after the fight, he came to us and said, "We just spent the last 3 hours, removing bolts that had their heads ripped off, because that front wedge, the triangular wedge, was held on with like 1 or 2 bolts left. So that punch for that we lost the chain is actually also the punch that ripped off the majority of those bolts." And so it was really exciting that seeing Tantrum do some really cool damage.
Yeah, I think Tantrum punch sort of isn't always the sort of sparkiest or most exciting, but I think we are able to deliver a lot of energy and get people in these sort of sneaky ways. And that energy travels through the robots, I think, in quite unexpected ways and can cause a lot of internal damage. So it's super exciting to hear that afterwards, even when we can't necessarily always see it. And I think the other detail with the punch chain coming off, actually, as sort of a little fun behind the scenes, is when we out of the arena at Rotator, that was just the Lord's plan, honestly. Like, it came from above, because the way our puncher works is it sits in a channel. So it's on its rails, it can slide freely, and it's got this loop of chain attached to it. And that chain sort of goes like back and forth, and that's how we punch. And so with that chain gone, it's just slipping and sliding in there completely on its own. And so, as we were pushing Rotator across the floor, it was actually momentum, believe it or not. MV equals MV.
Yeah, once they hit the wall, carriage went forward, carriage got a good fight, Rotator went up.
Tantrum and Rotator hit wall, carriage is still moving, it's got momentum, keeps flying forward, got just the right angle, and Rotator was out of the arena. So truly, in some ways, it was not intentional.
Right.
If we can make that repeatable, that saves like at least 8 pounds.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe we no actuated punch next year. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. No, we still want the punch, but it is funny to see the failure mode being that it slides freely. And I really like that. I like to think that we had some good engineering rather than divine intervention coming in.
You can have both. We can have.
Yeah, you can have both. You can have both. But it was an awesome K out of the arena. That was like one of the moments, like highlights of my BattleBots career. It was that moment.
Yeah.
And I think so. Yeah, I was watching as a spectator in this case, and Matt Vasquez on another podcast summed it up like, the greatest thing for me about that fight is it's back and forth. It's like, who's going to win? Both things are happening. They're getting counted out. They're getting awesome shots. They're getting good shots now. Arms are missing. Why is there arms? Okay. And boom, out of the arena at the end. So it's like highs, lows all over the place on which way it goes. And Tantrum got on the back foot again and then came out forward.
Yeah, I think as fun as it is to sort of have really decisive wins, as we'll talk about later, it is super rewarding to have that sort of back and forth to duel it out, yet still end with like a concise, yes, this is how the match ended, and not leave things.
It was after this fight that Brian Culver, comes up to me and is like, I had a heart attack. You guys are really, sweeping these last 2 fights on the edge with the Gigabyte fight and then now the Rotator fight.
Just keep chugging. Yeah. And so we have some more pictures as well, sort of the fight. You can see here, Rotator did give us a few good hits in the armor. So there's some scratches there and there. The classic sort of get us with their wedge and then whoosh, turn around and wham into our armor. But you can see Tantrum does okay with that. And then Alex, did you?
Yeah, Victor Soto is just an awesome competitor. Like the robot quality is like unrivaled, I'd say. Like I think Rotator was just an awesome robot to fight. Going into this fight, I legitimately didn't have a good feeling about it. Right? it was right on the edge for me. It was a 50-50. Oh, well, win or not, but like it's right on the edge. Like going against Gigabyte, I felt way better. But now going into Rotators, like 50-50, and the match showed it. We were like even skill, I guess.
Trading punches. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, they also showed this clip of the hospital. I think this Rocket Broken or Lucky match. So throughout the event, we had been working on this upgrade, but we sort of just came upon this picture that Steve took of sort of the upgraded sprocket. So just for funsies.
Yeah, on the right, you can see the aluminum, the 7075 sprocket. And on the left, you can see the upgraded one. I got rid of all the lightning patterns, and we said, let's make it straight out of steel. Like we have to wait for it, and hopefully it'll never break again. So It's all 4140 steel.
Yep. Awesome. And next week we fight Cobalt. So make sure y'all tune into that on Thursday. Before we get too much into it though, Aaron, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your jackpot fight? What were you thinking going into it?
Okay. It's a 4-wheel drive vert with a lot of energy behind it. So anytime that's happening, it's a certain level of, all right, I lose the ground game once, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt bad. And anybody swinging a weapon around that big, you cannot take lightly. Yeah. So that, and one of the other things was what we did in the Valkyrie fight. We also did similarly here, of starting out the match. Flywheel is very low speed. I did not want to lift the front end directly into that spinner. So that's why the initial pops were as low as they were. It's like tilt them up, get the job done.
Yeah. And so that strategy seemed to work again. And you were able to sort of nibble at Jackpot for a bit before really giving him some flips. You can see here.
Let's see. Yeah, Brian did make the bold choice of firing into their weapon.
I think we have a picture of the aftermath.
Yep. So that's a piece of 1/8" titanium across the front. So that's why there's this awesome white sparks. And then that front cross piece is a lightened piece of S7 tool steel. So I will mention that was the most annoying part to make for me on Blip, was that piece right there. And so seeing that picture was thanks, Jackpot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this is I would say the first like actual hit Blip has taken from anyone, aside from itself self-righting and landing on stuff. As far as like a big actual impact and catch, we got lucky in the Valkyrie fight. That was a whole lot of grinding on the front before the weapon died, and then lockjaw weapon died. It's like, okay, so this is the first time we got hit, and it happened to be us firing our flipper into a vertical spinner, but it was enough to get him tipped over.
Yeah. So when that happened, why didn't we flip him back over?
Because as I mentioned before, anything swinging around that big of a spinner, I don't take any chances with. We're in the tournament at this point. I had just watched the match where Tantrum made it in past Rotator in the nail biter of all nail biters. So I was perfectly content to say, nope, leaving him put, not giving that a nudge. Yep, nope.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that's just out of respect for the weapon and of the robot in general. It's like, yep, nope, you're good on your face. It was also immediately in front of me on the ground. So when that happened, I was able to just like look down, like evaluate situation. Yep, they're stuck. All right, leave that alone.
Mm-hmm. And what'd you think of Ace, their mini bot?
It's every time there's a mini bot, it's just a mind game in terms of. In this case, I know it's not the most controllable thing in the world, and our strategy for driving around quickly tends to be harder for them to get, but I did end the lockjaw fight with a decent stint spent on top of Screwjob. So Ace being in the arena was definitely one of those like, plus it's also not an easy robot for me to just like go KO. I don't have a big, like I don't have a vertical or horizontal to just go like take it out and make it not part of the equation. I had tried to flip it somewhere, but yeah. So it's just the paranoia, and that's another one of those things where it's just like I'm in that state of worried about stuff, no risks.
Yeah. Some people also noticed that we lost some wedgelets off the front of Blip's robot. Can you talk about sort of what's going on there? Is that intentional? Why are they breaking off?
Yeah, I don't want them to break off. That's not intentional, but Lockjaw's sneaky. The weapon itself actually spins below the chassis of the robot. So even if they lose the wedge game against someone and get picked up, they just immediately start hitting them anyway. So that's what a lot of those sparks were, with them taking off wedgelets from those hits, as far as like, okay, so I couldn't do that much longer and still have wedgelets to get them on top of me, and got to have them on top to flip. So it's like another thing that calculated into don't flip them back over. One thing I did notice during the fight, and I was reminded of, if you look at Brian over at the controller, he appears to be grasping a little nub. He broke off the switch again. So the flipper switch on the transmitter was broken again. He was operating it via the tiny nub. So even if we had, it would have taken us a bit to flip him back over.
Yeah, I think after this fight, Brian's switch privileges have been revoked and he got a button.
Yeah, buttons only now. Yeah.
No more switching. Brian doesn't know his own strength, like the Hulk. Gosh. Anyhow, I think finally one of the last things we wanted to mention is we also did a really cool interview with Hexbug, which you can go ahead and check out on their Facebook page. We've also shared it on all of our own socials, so definitely go do that. Do you have any?
Yeah, and it's always fun chatting with the Hexbug crew, just because like I used to work at Vex Robotics, was at the other end of the building from Hexbug, and then Jason Wyman popped up, did work for Hexbug. So in this case, the man holding the starter placard is Keith Dodgen, and like worked with them many years, like I don't know, 8 years, 6 or 7 years ago in Texas. And it's a fun one, just as far as like he was one of the first people that made me actually talk to a camera. So it's fun getting to talk to these guys again.
Yeah. It's all small
we really wanted to Blip and Tantrum rival set, or a sibling set, right. Just rebranded a little.
Siblings.
Yeah.
Family pack.
Family.
All right.
The marketing writes itself.
What can I say? And then another thing that's going on is that we have a finale viewing party in San Jose in the Bay Area. So if you're around, please come by. We'll have a bunch of builders there, a bunch of teams. There's a small cost, but we're not making any profit. It's simply just to cover the cost of the venue, so that we can put this on for everybody in a way that's sustainable for all of us. And yeah, we'll be watching it on the giant IMAX screen, and we'd love to chat with you, answer any questions. There might also be some robots there, which would be really fun. So we hope to see y'all there. And as usual, I say this every week, we could not do this without our sponsors. Truly, they make parts for us. They support us with in-kind donations, and they're truly, we're very, very grateful for their support. It's what helps us bring robots to the event, not just for us, but for y'all and for everybody. So they'll be linked down below as well. So please check them out. And then merch, if you want poker chips, shirts, the sorts, these profits also help us build robots. So we really
probably won't make it by Thursday, but
yeah, it won't. So you won't be able to wear them to our cool, super cool party. But your presence will be enough. So definitely still come. And then, make sure y'all tune into the final episode of the season this week.
Final episode.
Yeah.
Yep. Quarter of the robots left are ours, which is just weird to say out loud.
Quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. Boom, boom, boom. Should be action packed. So we're really excited to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank y'all. See y'all later.